Remember, an adjective is a word that describes a noun, like our song, adjectives, adjectives, they describe like blue, black, and white. Adjectives, adjectives, they describe like pretty, nice, and bright. So adjectives are words that describe a noun. Noun, person, place, thing, animal, idea. So for example, Miss Patterson's wearing a gray shirt. What's the noun? Shirt. What's the word describing the noun? What color is it? Gray. So that's our adjective. Now there are two different types of adjectives. There's something called a comparative adjective and superlative. So with comparative, all you need to know is that when you're comparing two nouns, you're going to use ER at the end of your noun. It's just what you're going to add to the end of the word, like a suffix. If you're comparing three or more nouns, you're going to be using the suffix EST at the end. So for example, I have 3 examples. It's going to be an I do, we do, you do. We're going to work to identify the adjective we need to use in the sentence and how many things are being compared. If it's 2 things being compared, we're going to use comparative. If it's 3 or more nouns being compared, we're going to use superlative. So it's our jobs to identify the adjective and then identify how many things are being compared. So let's try. So Miss Patterson's going to do the first one. Now the first one is at the bottom and it says math is interestinger / more interesting than reading. So in this case, I know my adjective is the word interesting, but I have to use it in the correct format. So I have to decide if I'm comparing 2 things or if I'm comparing 3 things. So I'm comparing math to another subject. So I'm gonna circle the things that I'm comparing. So math is being compared, this board is really awkward, to reading. Now I'm comparing just 2 things. So that means that I'm gonna use a comparative adjective. So I'm gonna use ER. But sometimes they trick you, because what I noticed is that interestinger is not a real word. So there are some rules. If your word has more than 2 syllables, you're gonna have to add another word in front of your adjective. So instead of interestinger, I would say something like more interesting. So when I fill in the blank, math is more interesting than reading. It makes the most sense. So let's do this next one together. We're going to do number 2. We're working our way up. Number 2 says, I think that my puppy is the blank of all. We have to identify our adjective. They already gave it to us. It's cutest or cuter. But to decide on which adjective I should use, I have to figure out how many things are being compared. So go ahead and I want you to look at the sentence number 2 and decide how many things are being compared. What's being compared? So I like to reread my sentences to figure this out. It says, I think that my puppy is the cutest or cuter of all. Well, I know I'm comparing my puppy to all the other puppies. So am I comparing 2 things or 3 or more? Puppy versus all. Think about it for a second. The word all kind of hints to me that it's 3 or more. So I know that I'm going to be using EST as my suffix because 3 or more being compared is superlative. So I'm actually going to circle cutest and then I'm going to reread it. I think that my puppy is the cutest of all because we're comparing 3 or more nouns. Now this last one, number 1, I want you guys to do all by yourself. I want you to think about how many things are being compared, how many nouns are being compared, and then identify the correct adjective. Are you going to be doing comparative where you are comparing just 2 nouns, or superlative where you're comparing 3 or more? I want you to choose the correct adjective with the correct suffix, reread the sentence out loud if you need to, and then see if it makes sense. Capiche? Caposh. Comparative and superlative adjectives. Comparative is comparing 2 nouns. Superlative is comparing 3 or more.